Zara Kethis sat alone on the cold metal bench near the docking bay of New Geneva Station and watched hundreds of beings walk past her without a single glance. The station buzzed with activity as traders, diplomats, and travelers from dozens of different worlds moved through the wide corridors. Some had 4 arms, others had scales instead of skin, and a few floated above the ground instead of walking. All of them had somewhere important to go and someone who wanted them there. She pulled her thin knees closer to her chest and tried to make herself even smaller than she already was. Being a Vorthek meant being the kind of person others forgot existed. Her people were known throughout the galaxy as the weakest and most useless species anyone had ever met. They were not strong like the warrior Kryn, not smart like the Nexus machines, and not wise like the Harmony priests. The Vorthek were just there, taking up space and breathing air that more important beings could use instead. The morning had started with such hope. Zara had waited in line for 3 hours to speak with a Kryn Empire recruiter who was looking for new workers. When her turn came, the massive reptilian warrior had looked down at her with yellow eyes that seemed to burn with disgust. His scales were dark green and covered in scars that told stories of battles Zara could never imagine fighting. "What can you do?" the Kryn had asked in a voice that sounded like grinding stone. "I can find patterns in things," Zara had said quietly. "I see how things connect to each other in ways that others miss." The warrior had laughed, showing teeth that could tear through metal. "Soft meat cannot fight. Soft meat cannot build. Soft meat is useless to the Empire." He had waved his clawed hand toward the door. "Go find work cleaning toilets where you belong." The Nexus Collective had been worse. Their representative was a tall gray being with a head full of mechanical parts that clicked and whirred when it thought. It had given Zara a test that measured how fast she could solve math problems and how much science she knew. When the results came back, the machine being had tilted its head and made a sound like a broken engine. "Intellectual capacity, insufficient," it had announced. "Memory storage, limited. Processing speed, below minimum standards. Application denied." Even the Peaceful Harmony Alliance had turned her away. Their recruiter was a gentle blue creature that spoke in whispers and smelled like flowers. It had asked Zara to meditate and share her spiritual energy. When nothing happened, the alien had shaken its head sadly. "I sense no connection to the greater harmony within you, child," it had said. "Perhaps your people are not ready for such enlightenment. Try again in a few decades when your soul has had time to grow." Now Zara sat on the bench and wondered if she should just go home to the Vorthek colony ship where she belonged. Her parents had told her not to bother trying to find work with the big species. "Know your place?" her mother had said. "We are small people who do small jobs. There is no shame in cleaning corridors or sorting garbage. That is what the universe needs us for." But Zara had always felt like there was something more inside her waiting to come out. When she looked at star charts, she could see paths that others missed. When she watched traffic patterns in the station, she could predict where jams would happen before they started. When she listened to people talk, she could hear the real meaning hidden behind their words. None of that seemed to matter to anyone important. A shadow fell across her, and she looked up to see a strange being standing nearby. It was tall and thin with pale skin and hair the color of sand. It had only 2 arms and 2 legs like a Vorthek, but it was much taller and its face looked different. The being wore simple clothes that were clean but old, and it carried a worn bag over one shoulder. "Why do you look sad?" the being asked in broken galactic standard. Zara blinked in surprise. No one had asked her how she felt in months. Most people acted like Vorthek did not have feelings worth caring about. She studied the stranger more carefully and realized what it was. This was a human, one of the newest species to join galactic society. She had heard whispers about them in the trading posts. They came from a small blue world on the edge of civilized space and had only been traveling between stars for a few hundred years. "I am looking for work," Zara said carefully. "But no one wants to hire a Vorthek." The human sat down on the bench beside her without asking permission. Most beings would never sit so close to someone they did not know, especially not someone from a weak species like hers. The human smelled like engine oil and something else she could not identify. "What kind of work?" the human asked. "Any kind," Zara said. "I tried the Empire, the Collective, and the Alliance. They all said I was not good enough." The human was quiet for a moment and seemed to be thinking hard about something. Its brown eyes looked kind, which was not an expression Zara was used to seeing directed at her. "My name is Jake," the human said. "I have a cargo ship called the Wandering Star. We carry things from one place to another and try not to get blown up by pirates or eaten by space monsters." Despite her sadness, Zara almost smiled at the way he described his job. Most ship captains talked about their vessels like they were mighty warships or advanced research platforms. This human made it sound like an adventure that might go wrong at any moment. "I could use an extra pair of hands," Jake continued. "The pay is not much and the work is not glamorous, but we treat our crew like family. Want to give it a try?" Zara stared at him in shock. She had been rejected by 3 of the most powerful organizations in the galaxy, and now this human was offering her a job after talking to her for less than 5 minutes. It had to be some kind of joke or mistake. "You do not know anything about me," she said. "You do not know if I am smart or strong or useful," Jake shrugged. "I know you were brave enough to try applying for jobs with the big shots even though everyone told you it was hopeless. I know you are sitting here feeling sorry for yourself instead of giving up and going home. That tells me you have spirit, and spirit is the most important thing on a ship like mine." He stood up and extended his hand toward her. "So what do you say? Ready to see what is out there among the stars?" Zara looked at his outstretched hand and felt something she had never experienced before. For the first time in her life, someone was offering her a chance to prove herself instead of telling her she was not worth the effort. Maybe this human was crazy or desperate, but he was also the first person to look at her and see possibility instead of failure. She reached out and took his hand. The Wandering Star was not the most beautiful ship Zara had ever seen. The hull was scratched and dented from years of hard use, and some of the exterior panels had been replaced with parts that did not quite match the original color. The cargo bay smelled like machine oil and something that might have been yesterday's dinner. But when Jake led her through the airlock and into the ship's corridors, Zara felt something she had never experienced before in her life. She felt, "Welcome, Lisa, Alex, Karen," Jake called out as they walked toward the main crew area. "Come meet our new crew member." 3 humans appeared from different parts of the ship and gathered around them. Lisa was a short woman with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and grease stains on her work clothes. Alex was tall and lean with skin the color of rich soil and quick eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Karen had gray hair and gentle hands that moved with the precision of someone who was used to fixing broken things. "This is Zara," Jake said. "She is going to help us keep this old bucket of bolts flying." Zara waited for the questions she had learned to expect. "What can you do? What training do you have? Why should we trust someone from such a weak species?" Instead, Lisa stepped forward and shook her hand with a firm grip. "Welcome aboard," Lisa said. "I run the engines and fix whatever breaks, which is pretty much everything on this ship. If you want to learn how things work, just ask." Alex grinned and gave her a small salute. "I fly us from point A to point B without crashing into anything important. The secret is knowing which things are safe to crash into." Karen smiled warmly and patted Zara's shoulder. "I keep everyone healthy and patch up whatever damage they do to themselves. The first rule of being crew is that we look out for each other." That was it. No tests, no challenges, no demands to prove herself worthy. They simply accepted her as one of them and got back to work preparing for their next cargo run. Zara followed them around the ship and watched how they interacted with each other. There was no hierarchy based on species or strength. Jake was the captain, but he listened to what everyone had to say before making decisions. When Lisa disagreed with his plan for the engine repairs, they discussed it until they found a solution that made sense to both of them. During her first week aboard the ship, Zara learned more about humans than she had ever known about any species, except her own. They were strange creatures who seemed to approach every problem from a different angle than the rest of the galaxy. Where other species relied on natural advantages like strength or intelligence or technology, humans seemed to believe that any problem could be solved if you were stubborn enough and willing to try enough different approaches. We were not the strongest or fastest or smartest on our home world, Jake explained to her one evening as they sat in the ship's small common area. We survived because we learned to work together and never gave up when things got difficult. What do you mean? Zara asked. Jake leaned back in his chair and looked thoughtful. On Earth, we had to compete with creatures that could run faster than our vehicles, had claws that could cut through metal, and had thick skin that could stop bullets. We had none of those advantages. We were just clever apes with opposable thumbs and the ability to cooperate with each other. How did you become the dominant species? Zara asked. Persistence, Alex said from across the room where he was studying star charts. When a saber-toothed tiger tried to eat us, we did not give up and accept death. We figured out how to make spears and work as a team to hunt it instead. When the Ice Age came and tried to freeze us to death, we did not just migrate somewhere warmer, Lisa added. We learned to make fire and build shelters and create warm clothes. When diseases tried to wipe us out, we did not just accept that some people were meant to die, Karen said. We studied the diseases and learned to make medicines and vaccines. Zara found this perspective fascinating. Every other species she had encountered seemed to accept their limitations as permanent facts. If you were born weak, you stayed weak. If your people were not naturally smart, they would never be smart. If your species was not suited for something, you found a different path and never tried to change your nature, but humans seem to think that any limitation could be overcome with enough effort and creativity. They did not accept that things had to stay the way they were just because that was how they had always been. 2 weeks into the journey, Zara got her first chance to see this philosophy in action. The ship's navigation system began displaying error messages and giving readings that made no sense. Lisa spent hours running diagnostics and checking connections, but the problems kept getting worse. We might have to put in at the next station. For major repairs, Lisa said, wiping sweat from her forehead. This is beyond what I can fix with the tools we have. Jake looked worried. They were carrying time-sensitive medical supplies to a colony that desperately needed them. Any delay could mean people would die waiting for treatments that were sitting in their cargo bay. What exactly is the system doing wrong? Zara asked quietly. Lisa showed her the diagnostic readouts. The navigation computer was reporting their position incorrectly, but not in a random way. There was a pattern to the errors that seemed to follow some kind of logic, but Lisa could not figure out what that logic might be. Zara studied the data for several minutes while the others waited. She had always been good at seeing patterns that others missed, but no one had ever cared about that skill before. Her parents had called it daydreaming. Her teachers had said it was a waste of time. The recruiters had dismissed it as irrelevant. The errors are not random, she said finally. They are connected to the gravitational fields we pass through. The computer is trying to compensate for gravity effects, but it is using old data that does not match the current stellar positions. Lisa blinked in surprise. You can see that just from looking at the readouts? The pattern is clear once you know what to look for, Zara said. The navigation system needs updated stellar position data, but it also needs to recalibrate its gravity sensors. Can you show me exactly what needs to be fixed? Lisa asked. For the next 3 hours, Zara worked alongside Lisa to repair the navigation system. She pointed out the specific problems while Lisa made the physical repairs and adjustments. By the time they were finished, the system was working better than it had in months. How did you learn to do that? Alex asked when he heard about the repairs. I did not learn it, Zara said. I just looked at the patterns and saw what they meant. Jake clapped her on the shoulder, and Zara felt a warmth spread through her chest. It was the first time anyone had ever congratulated her for using her natural abilities instead of trying to hide them or be ashamed of them. Every species has something special, Jake said. The trick is figuring out what that something is and refusing to let anyone tell you it does not matter. That night, as Zara lay in her small cabin listening to the gentle hum of the ship's engines, she realized that, for the first time in her life, she was exactly where she belonged. The humans did not care that she was weak or small or from a species that no one respected. They cared that she was part of their crew and that she had skills that could help them succeed. She was finally home. The distress signal came through on the emergency channel while Zara was helping Lisa perform routine maintenance on the engine systems. The automated message repeated every 30 seconds in multiple languages, each transmission growing weaker as the broadcasting ship's power systems failed. "This is the research vessel Harmony's Dream requesting immediate assistance," the message said. "We are trapped in the Kronos asteroid field with failing life support. Navigation systems are offline and we cannot escape the gravitational anomalies. Any ship capable of rescue operations, please respond immediately." Jake called all hands to the bridge, where they gathered around the communication console to hear the full details. The Harmony's Dream was a scientific vessel from the Harmony Alliance that had been studying the unusual gravitational patterns in the Kronos Nebula. Something had gone wrong during their research, and now they were stuck deep inside an asteroid field that was notorious for destroying ships that tried to navigate through it. "How many crew members are aboard?" Karen asked. 43 researchers and support staff, the message replied when Jake sent the question. "Life support will fail completely in 18 hours. We have tried to signal for help, but 3 rescue attempts have already failed. The gravitational anomalies make it impossible for large ships to navigate safely through the field." Alex pulled up the star charts and showed them the location of the asteroid field. It was a chaotic maze of spinning rocks, some as small as pebbles and others as large as small moons. Worse, the gravitational effects from the nearby nebula caused the asteroids to move in unpredictable patterns that changed constantly. "No wonder the rescue attempts failed," Alex said. "Trying to fly through that would be like trying to thread a needle while riding a bucking horse during an earthquake." The Harmony Alliance is offering a substantial reward for a successful rescue," Lisa noted, reading the technical details of the distress call. "But they are also warning that the risks are extremely high. They do not want more ships destroyed trying to help. Most ship captains would have looked at the odds and decided the risk was too great." The asteroid field had already claimed 3 rescue vessels, and conventional navigation techniques were useless in the chaotic environment. Even ships with advanced computers and experienced crews had been unable to find a safe path through the gravitational maze, but Jake studied the information with the expression Zara had learned to recognize when he was seeing a challenge rather than an obstacle. "What do you think?" he asked his crew. "Are we crazy enough to try this?" "Crazy is our specialty," Alex said with a grin. "But I have to be honest, boss. I have never tried to fly through anything like that. One wrong move, and we become part of the asteroid field ourselves." "The ship can handle the stress if we modify the engine output systems," Lisa said thoughtfully. "I can boost the maneuvering thrusters and reinforce the hull plating. We will be more agile but also more fragile. I can prepare medical supplies in case we take damage," Karen added. "But if we get crushed by an asteroid, there is not much I can do to help." All eyes turned to Zara, and she realized they were waiting for her opinion. On any other ship, the newest and least experienced crew member would not have a voice in such an important decision. But the humans had made it clear that everyone's thoughts mattered when lives were at stake. "Can I see the detailed scans of the asteroid field?" Zara asked. Alex brought up the most recent survey data on the main screen. The display showed thousands of moving objects in a 3-dimensional space that seemed to have no pattern or logic. Most beings would look at such chaos and see only destruction waiting to happen. But as Zara studied the data, she began to notice something that the others had missed. "The movement is not random," she said quietly. "What do you mean?" Jake asked. Zara pointed to different sections of the display and traced invisible lines. "Between the moving asteroids, there is a rhythm to how they move. The gravitational effects from the nebula create a pattern that repeats every few hours. If you know when the pattern starts and how long each cycle takes, you can predict where the safe spaces will be. Lisa frowned and looked more closely at the data. I see the gravitational readings, but they look like chaos to me. That is because you are looking at individual measurements instead of the whole picture, Zara explained. If you track the changes over time and compare them to the nebula's rotation, you can see the underlying structure. She spent the next hour working with Alex to map out the pattern she had discovered. It was incredibly complex, with dozens of variables affecting the movement of thousands of objects, but it was definitely there. The asteroid field was like a vast mechanical clock with gears made of rock and springs made of gravity. This is amazing, Alex said when he finally understood what Zara was showing him. If your calculations are correct, there are windows of time when certain paths through the field become stable enough for navigation. How long do the windows last? Jake asked. Between 15 and 30 minutes each, Zara replied. But you have to enter the field at exactly the right time and follow a very specific route. Any deviation from the path or delay in timing would be fatal. Jake was quiet for several minutes while he considered the risks. They would be attempting something that larger and more advanced ships had failed to accomplish. If Zara's pattern analysis was wrong, or if her timing was off by even a few minutes, they would all die in the attempt. The people on that research ship will definitely die if no one helps them, Jake said finally. We might die if we try to help them. I know which odds I prefer. The crew spent the next 6 hours preparing for the rescue attempt. Lisa modified the engines and thrusters according to Zara's specifications for the precise maneuvers they would need to make. Alex studied the navigation route until he could fly it with his eyes closed. Karen prepared emergency medical supplies and made sure the ship's life support systems could handle additional passengers. Zara worked continuously to refine her calculations and identify the optimal entry time for their rescue attempt. The math was incredibly complex, but she found herself thinking more clearly than she ever had before. For the first time in her life, people were depending on her unique abilities to solve a problem that no one else could handle when they reached the edge of the asteroid field. Zara felt her stomach tighten with nervous energy. Through the viewports, she could see the chaotic dance of rocks and debris that had already destroyed 3 ships. Somewhere in that maze of death, 43, people were waiting for someone to save them. Entry window opens in 12 minutes, Zara announced, watching the gravitational readings change according to her predicted pattern. All systems ready, Lisa reported from the engine room. Course plotted and locked in, Alex said from the pilots. Seat. Medical bay prepared for casualties. Karen added. Jake settled into the captain's chair and activated the ship-wide communication system. Attention Harmony's Dream. This is Captain Jake Morrison aboard the cargo vessel Wandering Star. We are beginning our rescue approach. Please prepare your crew for emergency evacuation. Wandering Star, this is Dr. Helen Price aboard Harmony's Dream, came the reply. We have been monitoring your communications and we understand the risks you are taking. Our crew is ready for evacuation, but please do not sacrifice yourselves for us if the attempt becomes too dangerous. Entry window opens in 30 seconds. Zara called out, her eyes fixed on the gravitational readings. Jake looked around at his crew and saw determination on every face. They had chosen to risk their lives for strangers because that was what humans did. They did not calculate odds or weigh costs. When people needed help, they helped. Take us in, Alex. Jake ordered. The Wandering Star plunged into the asteroid field and began the most dangerous flight of their lives. The rescue mission had been a complete success. Following Zara's precise calculations and timing, Alex had threaded the Wandering Star through the asteroid field like a needle through silk. They had reached the trapped research vessel with minutes to spare and evacuated all 43 crew members before the life support systems failed completely. The return journey had been even more challenging, with the added weight and crowded conditions making every maneuver more difficult, but Zara's pattern analysis had held true throughout the entire operation. Now, 3 weeks later, the effects of their achievement were spreading throughout the galaxy faster than they had ever imagined possible. The rescue had been recorded by the Harmony Alliance's emergency monitoring systems, and the footage of a small human cargo ship accomplishing what three larger vessels had failed to do was being broadcast on news networks across dozens of star systems. Dr. Helen Price, the chief researcher they had rescued, had made sure everyone knew exactly who deserved credit for the impossible navigation feat in every interview she gave. She praised Zara's unique analytical abilities and explained how the young Vorthak had discovered patterns that even the Alliance's most advanced computers had missed. "Without Zara Kethis, we would all be dead," Dr. Price told reporters. She saw order where everyone else saw only chaos. Her mind works in ways that our finest scientists cannot fully understand, and that gift saved 43 lives. For the first time in her existence, Zara found herself famous throughout the galaxy. Messages of congratulations arrived daily from research institutions, navigation guilds, and even government officials who wanted to meet the remarkable young woman who had solved the impossible puzzle of the Kronos asteroid field. The attention felt strange and wonderful, but it also brought complications that none of them had anticipated. 2 days after they delivered their rescued passengers to safety, a massive Kryn Empire battleship intercepted the Wandering Star near the Sigma Centauri trade station. "Cargo vessel Wandering Star, you will prepare to receive an Imperial boarding party," came the harsh voice of Commander Vex Thorn, the same reptilian warrior who had rejected Zara's job application months earlier. "You are carrying stolen Imperial property that must be returned immediately." Jake activated the communication system with a confused expression. "Commander, I think there has been a mistake. We are not carrying any Imperial cargo. Our manifest is clean and all our papers are in order. The Vorthek female aboard your vessel is a strategic resource belonging to the Kryn Empire," Commander Thorne replied. "All Vorthek colonies operate under Imperial protection, which means their citizens are subject to Imperial authority. The female will be transferred to our custody for proper utilization of her abilities." Zara felt her blood turn to ice water. She had known this might happen eventually, but she had hoped her newfound fame would protect her rather than make her a target. The Kryn Empire had dismissed her as worthless when she applied for work, but now that she had proven her value, they wanted to claim ownership of her abilities. "Zara is not property," Jake said firmly. "She is a free citizen and a member of my crew. You have no authority to take her against her will." Commander Thorne's laughter sounded like grinding metal. "Humans have no understanding of galactic law or Imperial authority. The female belongs to us by right of species protection. Prepare for boarding or we will take her by force." Before Jake could respond, another voice cut into the communication channel. It was smooth and electronic, with the precise pronunciation that marked it as coming from the Nexus Collective. "Kryn vessel, this is Coordinator Prime 07 of the Nexus Research Division," the voice announced. "We have prior claim to the Vorthak female based on her demonstrated analytical capabilities. She will be transferred to our facilities for proper study and development." A third ship decloaked nearby, its sleek design marking it as belonging to the Harmony Alliance. "All vessels, this is Captain Song of the Alliance Diplomatic Corps," came a gentle but firm voice. "The individual in question is currently under Alliance protection as a registered rescue operative. Any attempt to remove her from her chosen assignment will be considered an act of aggression." Zara watched through the viewports as more ships continued to arrive. Word of the standoff was spreading through the local communication networks, and vessels from multiple species were converging on their location. Some came out of curiosity, others out of political interest, but many came because they had heard about the humans who refused to abandon one of their own. "This is getting out of hand," Lisa said nervously as she monitored the tactical displays. "We have got a small fleet forming out there, and most of them have enough firepower to vaporize us without breaking a sweat." More human ships began appearing on the edge of the growing fleet. They were not military vessels, but cargo haulers, exploration ships, and merchant traders whose crews had heard about the situation through the informal networks that connected human spacers throughout the galaxy. None of them were individually powerful enough to challenge a Kryn battleship, but together they represented a significant force. Human vessels withdraw immediately or face the consequences, Commander Thorne transmitted on an open channel. This matter does not concern you. Actually, it concerns us very much, replied Captain Betty Walsh of the freighter New Horizon. When someone threatens one of our own, they threaten all of us. The female is not human, the Kryn commander pointed out. She has no claim to your protection. She is crew, came the reply from Captain Dan Rodriguez of the explorer ship Star Dancer. Species does not matter when someone is part of your family. Zara felt tears forming in her eyes as she listened to dozens of human captains explaining why they would not allow her to be taken against her will. These people did not know her personally, but they were willing to risk their ships and their lives to protect her freedom simply because she was part of the human community that had accepted her. The standoff continued for hours as more ships arrived, and the political situation became increasingly complex. Representatives from the Galactic Council were demanding that all parties withdraw and submit to mediation. The Kryn Empire was insisting on their legal rights under species protection treaties. The Nexus Collective was arguing that her abilities made her too valuable to waste on menial cargo work. The Harmony Alliance was claiming jurisdiction based on her rescue activities. Through it all, the human ships maintained their position around the wandering star like a protective barrier. They had no legal authority to interfere, no military power to enforce their will, and no political standing to demand recognition. All they had was their stubborn refusal to let one of their own be taken away from where she belonged. As night cycle approached on the local station, Jake gathered his crew in the common area to discuss their options. The political pressure was enormous, and it was clear that powerful forces throughout the galaxy wanted to claim control over Zara's unique abilities. I could go with them voluntarily, Zara said quietly. If I cooperate, maybe they will leave the rest of you alone. That is not happening, Jake said firmly. You are part of this crew, and we do not abandon our own. But I'm causing problems. For everyone, Zara protested. The Kryn Empire could destroy your ship. The Nexus Collective could have you arrested. Even the Harmony Alliance might decide you are interfering with their operations, Alex shook his head. You are not causing these problems. These organizations are causing problems by trying to treat you like property instead of a person. The question is not whether we will protect you, Lisa added. The question is how we can solve this situation in a way that keeps everyone safe. Karen smiled and patted Zara's hand. Besides, do you really think we would let you go work for people who only want you now that you have proven yourself valuable? They had their chance to recognize your worth and they chose to insult you instead. As they talked, Zara realized that the humans were not just protecting her out of loyalty or stubbornness. They were defending a principle that was fundamental to their way of thinking. They believed that every person had the right to choose their own path, regardless of what others thought they deserved or where they came from. I want to make a formal request, Zara said suddenly. I want to address the Galactic Council directly and ask them to rule on this situation. That could be very dangerous, Jake warned. If the Council rules against you, there will be no appeal and no way to fight their decision. But if I can make them understand what this is really about, maybe I can change how they think about these situations, Zara replied. No one should have to face what I am facing just because powerful people decide they are valuable. Jake looked around at his crew and saw agreement on every face. It was a risky plan, but it was also the kind of bold gesture that humans specialized in making. Then we request a formal hearing, Jake announced to the waiting fleet. Let the Council decide this matter according to galactic law and justice. What none of them realized was that Zara had already decided what she was going to say to the Council, and it was a question that would challenge the very foundations of galactic civilization. The Galactic Council chambers were more impressive than anything Zara had ever seen in her life. The massive circular room could hold representatives from over 100 different species, with specialized environments for beings that breathed different atmospheres or required different gravity levels. Today, nearly every seat was filled as delegates from across the galaxy gathered to witness what many considered the most important hearing in decades. Zara stood in the center of the chamber, feeling tiny beneath the towering ceiling and surrounded by beings who represented the most powerful civilizations in known space. The Kryn Empire delegation sat in their environmental pod that replicated their homeworld's harsh desert conditions. The Nexus Collective representatives occupied a section filled with mechanical interfaces and holographic displays. The Harmony Alliance members were arranged in a peaceful circle that seemed to glow with soft blue light. Above them all, on the highest tier of the chamber, sat the Council Elders, ancient beings from the first species to achieve interstellar travel. They were so old that some had forgotten their original forms and existed as pure energy contained within crystalline structures. Their voices resonated through the chamber with the weight of thousands of years of accumulated wisdom. This hearing will address the legal status of the individual known as Zara Kethis, announced Elder Prime, whose voice sounded like distant thunder. Multiple parties have claimed authority over this individual based on various interpretations of galactic law. We will hear all arguments before rendering judgment. Commander Vex Thorn rose first, his massive reptilian form dominating the Kryn. Section: Honored Elders, the law is clear. The Vorthic species exists under Kryn protection by ancient treaty. All citizens of protected species are subject to imperial authority when their abilities serve the greater good of the galaxy. This female possesses strategic navigation capabilities that could benefit imperial operations. She belongs with us. Coordinator Prime 07 of the Nexus Collective responded with mechanical precision. The Kryn argument is flawed. Superior intellectual capabilities transcend species boundaries and political agreements. This individual's analytical abilities represent the